Welcome, everyone. This is Joseph S. Samaniego, the author of the Destined Series, and I'm joined by my friend Jacob Rundle. Jacob, you want to give us an introduction of yourself, please?
So my name is Jacob Rundle. I am the author of the Destined Series that will be re-released later this summer through Three Fears Press. I'm also an avid book reviewer and book blogger, and I don't really consider myself a bookstagrammer, but I take simple pictures, and I just like to spread the word about books that are from own voices and from people of color and LBGTQ authors, because that is what is really important right now.
All right, sounds great. So definitely, as an author, I know a lot of what you've done has been supportive to the writing community.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty evident. Your site, Writer's Alley, has been pretty busy, I've seen.
Yeah.
So, how did you get involved into the writing community?
So initially, I wanted to write a book, and I knew that it wasn't going to get done unless I did it. And so, getting involved, doing all that research, they always talk about you need an author platform. So I looked into how to do that, because initially I was going to go traditional, and I wanted to have that, have the ground of a author platform. And within that, it was talking about, Twitter and Instagram and having our own website and stuff like that. And so then I got into Twitter, and then that's when I found the writing community. And just throughout, the past couple of years, I've noticed there's this great divide between, self-publishing, indie authors, and then traditional publishing. So I kind of I wanted to be one of the people that was kind of in the middle, trying to tell everybody, we just have different paths. So what I aimed to do was to read and review indie and self, and also traditional publishing, because it's important to get all of the stories out. And that's honestly why I work so hard as I do, to promote, all three different routes of publishing.
That sounds great. Like I said, I've seen a lot of your support, especially in recent. You've been doing a lot of promoting for authors, which is something that I think, as an author myself, we all need.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of us are not great promoters of our own work.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely has that help to have that hand.
Yeah, and that was another thing I learned throughout the process, because I started, yes, I was going to go traditional, but my real first start was as a self-published author. I knew that marketing was it. That's just one aspect that you need to have. And and so that's why I jumped so, deeply into that. And I was on everything, every website, every chance for an interview or a review or a Facebook group or anything like that, because you need to get your name out there. And the one thing about, actually, it doesn't really matter what kind of route you take, you need exposure. And as a self-publishing and an indie author, it is harder for us than it is traditional, because we don't have a giant, one of the big five or just another big publishing company behind us. And that was another motivating forces, even though it was arrogance to my ego. I was like, I don't need that. It can't be that hard, which is completely false.
Yes. Oh yeah.
It's draining in every aspect. And that's why one time last year I took a couple months off. Mm-hmm. I needed it because I was so burnt out. And yeah.
Yeah, it is. It can be very discouraging at times.
Yeah, it's because there's this, like I said earlier, there's this constant, I wouldn't say feud, but I mean, not all traditional published authors feel that self-publishers aren't real authors. I feel like that's kind of a misconception that goes around. Maybe some do, maybe some don't, whatever. But honestly, it doesn't matter what route you go. If this is the route that you want, you need to not listen to those external voices that aren't beneficial or motivating for you. And again, that was another reason why I was like, you know what, I want to help other people no matter what route they are. Because we all need it. Like, we're all in this together, and just because you are a traditional author, you know, it just depends on your publishing house. It doesn't mean you have this giant budget to have all this promotion. Like, you have to do it on your own. You have to create your own website. You don't have help. So,
oh yeah, that's definitely true. So now the Destined series is a urban fantasy series.
yes, it is.
So, as a fantasy author, what are your thoughts on our, as speaking from fantasy genre myself, but what are your thoughts on the fantasy genre and where it's kind of how it's come about and where it's going?
That's a really good question, because I'm always watching, you know, I'm trying to find new like book or author tubers,
Yeah.
and some of them are traditional. They're always talking about how urban fantasy is like an unpublishable genre in the traditional area, which is interesting because there's now this subgenre that is contemporary fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, this is just mine, it's very similar to urban fantasy. They just don't call it urban fantasy. So my views of fantasy is that you hear these things that they're just not publishable, or like urban fantasy is more successful in sub-publishing than it is in traditional, which is it's interesting. So the fact that depending on what route you take, that may or may not sway which subgenre you gravitate towards. And that was kind of my issue when I first started. Is like, I want to write something, well, one, that I want to read.
Yeah.
And two, I want to write something that's going to sell. Because we all have this notion, this grand notion, that we want to be that author that can sit at home all day and write. And I had that opportunity because I was in between jobs and I hated it.
Yeah.
It was a good learning experience, but it's just not for me. So I like the way it's going, like in the self-publishing route, is everyone is just writing the fantasy story that they want. You know, because I'm obviously part of the LBGTQ community, I'm seeing more people have main characters that are part of that spectrum. That is awesome. More own voices, more people of color. They're just writing stories that need to be told. And I'm not saying that's not happening in the traditional route, but obviously they have a little more, or a couple more barriers than we do.
Yeah, and the traditional route does seem to be more geared towards what's commercial.
It is, and
what has been traditionally commercial.
Yes, that's very true. And I mean, that's part of it. And I'm not talking, you know, bad about anyone that's going the traditional route. I understand, like, because I mean, I'm querying right now with another story, so I understand that it is a commercial route. So you have to write. They won't pick up something that won't sell. So to go in thinking like, oh yeah, this agent's totally going to pick me up because the story is so amazing. It could be amazing, but the thing is, if they don't think that they can sell it, you will get rejected.
Yes.
And if you don't understand that and don't take it to heart, you won't. You know, honestly, you won't last long.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think a lot of authors kind of forget is that a big part of the rejections aren't that your skill, aren't because of your skill sets, because of what is marketable at that time.
Yes.
Just because you get rejected for a story today doesn't mean in a year you'll get rejected for it.
Exactly. And I think to go with that, a lot of it, I guess just speaking my personal experience, when I first started, I was like, because granted, I got like 20 to 30 rejections from book one, because like I said, I was going to go the traditional route. Now that's not that many compared to some people.
Yeah.
But to me, because I was just starting and I was arrogant. I was like, oh, this is, they keep saying no, like this story must suck and no one's going to want to read it or anything like that. But now, like a year and a half later, and I've done more research and I've interacted with more traditional published people, I'm like, oh, maybe it just wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have taken it so personal. The story is good because I had success with it as a self-publisher. So I just made that connection that I had to separate, my personal feelings, because that's my, my story and my child,
Oh yeah, definitely.
versus like, commercially.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good point to make, and I think that's where a lot of people recognize you too from, is the fact that you have that experience now, and you're trying to pass it on to the newer authors that are coming out,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially as they're maybe struggling through their learning process there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things that you are becoming really known for in the writing community is your support. Um, what is, I mean, what, I guess, what's the overall goal that you have there? Because be honest with you, I wish I could devote all the time to support other authors as you do. It's very
Mm-hmm.
admirable. It's a role model type thing. But um, I guess if you had to choose, would you want to be a reviewer or an author, or keep it at both?
And that's a good that's that's a very good question, because honestly, I struggle with that every day. Because I do work a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Even right now, I'm still working. I still go to work, and I work minimum like 50 hours a week.
Oh wow.
And sometimes I work more, but at the same time, I'm single. I don't have kids. I don't have anyone else to take care of other than me. So it's like, I obviously I love reading, obviously, because why I
Yeah.
wouldn't be doing this. Um, but it's so hard to find that balance, because I also write. So as I'm writing, I feel kind of that I'm pushing the story, and then I have to stop because I don't want to write something
Mm-hmm.
that I feel forced to. It'd be one thing if I was on a deadline from a publisher, but then I'm not. So the ultimate goal, though, for the reason why I'm doing, all these giveaways, is uh, is like right now I'm very fortunate in the fact that I'm still working,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people aren't. So I'm seeing, it's very depressing, and
Yeah.
it's totally understandable. So I thought, I was like, why don't I just like do some giveaways to where someone who either lost their job, or if they didn't lose their job, but they're just going through something right now because of this pandemic.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe if they win that book, maybe that little thing will spark like, okay, someone else cares. I'm not alone, and maybe that story will shift or bring a change in me that they need at that moment. So that's why, I started doing it. And as of right now, most of them have been traditional stories, but I still have a lot more that I want to do. So at the same time, I felt so bad for all the people that had books coming out right now, that all their events were canceled.
Oh yeah.
And that to me was so disheartening, and I felt so bad. I was like, I couldn't even imagine. It's one thing if I was doing my own thing and I had all these like things set up, but all that, and I'm not saying that going the traditional route was harder, it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
But getting that agent, doing all those revisions, going on submission, finding a publisher, you're already beat up. And then now you have your books coming out, and you have all these events, and boom, they're all canceled. So how are these readers going to know about these books? And so that's another reason why I promote the ones that I do. Well, because I've read them. But I'm like, these stories, the world does need to read them. Just like with indie and self-publishing, like there are stories that need to be told. I think in my mind, it's kind of like switching. It doesn't really matter what route you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's that the stories that need to be written are written, and they are read, especially right now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so that's why I did that.
and I think having people read more now helps, because it can help take your mind off of a lot of what's going on as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because, and it relieves that stress, because I mean I think everyone's at that stress really high level right now.
Yeah.
So, and reading can help that.
And I've noticed that, especially like at my own job, I mean, it's a scary time. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't watch the news. I don't read any of it, because I don't want to get my hopes up, or I don't want to increase my anxiety. it's high for everybody.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I've been doing has obviously been reading more. And a lot of the stuff that's coming out this year, one of them, Cemetery Boys, which I promote a lot. I'm actually on the street team for. It has a trans main character. There are almost no books that have that. Mm-hmm. That is a story that needs to be told. It's written. That's a story that needs to be read. Because that, visibility for the trans individuals of the LGBT community, it needs to be out there.
Yeah, that I'm sure will help a lot of people, and really a lot of people will be able to relate to that.
Yeah. Well, just like with your, you make the maps, right?
Yeah.
So I know we had that conversation one time about, you doing your map thing, And the reason why I was so like, oh, you should do it, on a tangent, everyone's idea of level of success is different. Mm-hmm. So if you were like, oh, if I made one map for somebody, that would be awesome, which it would be. But by doing that, you could possibly help someone else who or a reader or a writer that is more visual, mm-hmm. who can look at your map before they read it, or during or after or whenever, and that can help them connect to the story. That's why, map making, in my opinion, is so important. And the books that I promote right now, they all have maps. Not all of them have maps, but that helps people. So that could be like your way of helping an indie author who doesn't know what they're doing, but has an idea for a map. They talk to you, they get a map, and then they can write their entire story. You just help someone write a story. Yeah. It's all about karma,
Yeah. Oh, and I love doing it, and I appreciate that. And I remember that conversation we had. Actually, we had a couple times similar conversation. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it definitely it's fun to do, and it helps. And as a reader, that was what I was always drawn to first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it does help. But speaking of kind of what we're working on, what do we have coming up for Jacob?
So I just submitted 2 stories to 3 Furies. So book 2 of the Destined will be coming out next year, and another story, which is, I would say, I don't want to give away too much, but Joan of Arc meets like King Arthur with a little bit of time travel.
Okay.
But based in a dystopian kind of setting. Mm. So I'm really excited about that. But other than that, I'm still working on like 3 other stories, again, trying not to push it. Mm. But like one of them I'm really intrigued with. It'll be more of an own voice, having an individual based in a society where people are assigned genetic markers, and like what would happen if somebody could change it. Does that changes their place in society? What they mean as an individual in that time. So I'm working on like 3 stories, like I said, right now.
That sounds really interesting, and definitely sounds exciting. Looking forward to reading more of your work.
Thank you.
So before we go, just like I said, I'd like to say thanks to you for the support that you've given, not only for me, but in general, just all the other authors that you've supported. I know it's not easy. And if it was, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. But I also want to thank you because I know you're a veteran of the Navy. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you for your service. My grandfather was a Navy veteran.
So, okay.
And come from a military family. I myself was not, but most of my family was. So thank you for your service to our country, to the world. And I guess I'm going to say stay safe out there. And I appreciate you coming on and talking to me.
Thank you. And you too.
And we got to do this again. We'll have to do when we got some more stuff to talk about. We'll definitely have to do this again.
Oh, I always have stuff to talk about. So
I do too. I would,
So just hit me up. It's fine.
all right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is Joseph S. Samaniego with Jacob Rundle. And be sure to watch out for all the cool things we got coming up.
Thank you.
Take care.